Marcus stood in the doorway of the mansion watching movers throw his wife's belongings onto the lawn like trash. Her clothes landed in the dirt, her books scattered across the driveway. The quilt her grandmother made, the one she'd kept since childhood, got tossed onto the concrete. Neighbors lined the street with their phones out recording everything. This was the kind of public destruction people would talk about for months. The kind of humiliation that would live on social media forever. Hello, friends. Welcome to Black Bite Stories. Before we begin today's story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our... And don't forget to tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from our global family. Kaisha didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't beg. She just stood there on those front steps clutching a worn leather folder against her chest. Her face was calm even as her world collapsed around her. Behind Marcus stood his mother Gloria, a woman who'd hated Kaisha from day one. And on the balcony above, wearing Kaisha's silk robe, stood Jasmine, rubbing her pregnant belly like she'd already won. The woman Marcus had been sleeping with for 9 months. The woman who was about to take everything Kaisha thought was hers. Gloria stepped forward, her voice loud enough for everyone on the street to hear. You need to understand something, Kaisha. This house, this lifestyle, this family, you never deserved any of it. You were always just charity. My son took pity on a girl from the projects, and this is how you repay him. Marcus walked down the steps and pulled out his wallet. He counted out $500 bills like he was tipping a waitress. Here, he said, holding the money out to Kaisha like she was begging on the corner. That's more than you came with. Take it and go. Jasmine laughed from the balcony, that high-pitched cackle that made Kaisha's skin crawl. Girl, you better take that money while you can. Once this baby comes, you won't get nothing. Gloria moved closer to Kaisha, her face twisted with pure disgust. Then she did something that made everyone on the street gasp. She slapped Kaisha across the face hard. The sound echoed through the quiet morning air like a gunshot. That's for wasting 3 years of my son's life, Gloria said. Now get off this property before I call the police. 2 security guards Gloria had hired specifically for this moment stepped forward. They grabbed Kaisha by the arms and walked her to the gate like she was a criminal. Behind her she could hear Jasmine squealing with excitement, already planning how she'd redecorate the master bedroom. As Kaisha walked away from that mansion, her face still stinging from the slap, carrying nothing but the clothes on her back and that leather folder, she didn't look back. She'd stopped fighting 3 months ago, not because she was weak, not because she'd given up, but because she already knew how this story would end. Kaisha Davis hadn't always lived in mansions. She'd come from the West Side projects of Chicago, raised by her grandmother Lorraine Davis in a 2-bedroom apartment that barely had heat in winter. They didn't have much, but what they had was real. Love that didn't need expensive gifts to prove itself. Dignity that didn't come from designer clothes. Her grandmother Lorraine was the kind of woman people respected without her ever having to demand it. She spoke softly but carried herself like royalty. She taught Kaisha that grace wasn't weakness, that silence wasn't surrender, that real power didn't need to announce itself to the world. Lorraine Davis died 5 years ago, right before Kaisha met Marcus. Before she passed, she gave Kaisha a gold locket. Inside was a tiny photograph and a folded piece of paper with an address written in Lorraine's careful handwriting. When the time is right, Lorraine had told her granddaughter lying in that hospital bed with machines beeping, You'll understand what I left you. Don't open it until your heart is ready. You'll know when that moment comes. Kaisha wore that locket every day. She never opened it, never unfolded that paper. She kept it close to her heart, waiting for the moment her grandmother promised would come. 6 months after Lorraine died, Kaisha met Marcus at the coffee shop where she worked downtown. He came in to buy a latte before a big meeting. Something about the way he smiled made Kaisha feel seen for the first time in years. He was charming and ambitious, working in commercial real estate, always talking about big deals and bigger dreams. He swept her off her feet with fancy dinners and weekend trips, made her feel like she was special, like her project background didn't matter, like love was enough. They got married within a year in a small ceremony that Gloria complained about from start to finish. For the first 2 years, things were good. Not perfect, but good enough. Marcus worked long hours, but he came home. They talked about having children someday, made plans for the future. Then 2 years into their marriage, Marcus told Kaisha they were moving. He'd closed a major deal, his biggest one yet. The company was giving him a bonus property to manage, and they'd be living there rent-free as long as he kept the account happy. When Kaisha first saw the Davis estate, something in her chest tightened. The name Davis, her grandmother's last name. She asked Marcus about it, tried to sound casual, even though her heart was racing. He waved it off like it meant nothing. Just a coincidence, baby. Davis is a common enough name. Don't read too much into it. But Kaisha couldn't shake the feeling. She started researching late at night when Marcus was asleep. Looked up property records, old family histories, anything she could find about the Davis estate and the people who'd owned it. What she discovered changed everything. 3 months before Marcus threw her out, Kaisha finally opened her grandmother's locket. Inside that folded piece of paper had an address. The same address as the mansion she'd been living in. The Davis estate. Kaisha sat in her car outside a probate lawyer's office for 20 minutes before she found the courage to walk inside. The lawyer, an older black woman named Ms. Washington, listened to Kaisha's story and asked to see any documentation she had. 2 weeks later, Ms. Washington called Kaisha back into her office with news that seemed impossible. Lorraine Davis had been born into one of the wealthiest black families in Chicago. The Davis family had built their fortune through land ownership, manufacturing, and eventually real estate development. By the 1950s, they were worth millions. But Lorraine had walked away from all of it. She'd fallen in love with a simple working man, and her family gave her an ultimatum. Leave him or lose your inheritance. Lorraine chose love. She disappeared into the West Side projects and lived the rest of her life in that tiny apartment, never once regretting her decision. What the Davis family didn't know was that Lorraine's name had never been legally removed from the inheritance trust. When she died with no will, no formal renunciation, and only one living descendant, the entire estate, now worth over $500 million, fell to her bloodline. Kaisha Davis was the sole legal heir to everything her grandmother had left behind. Miss Washington spent 3 months processing the paperwork, verifying the inheritance, making sure every legal detail was ironclad. During those 3 months, Kaisha watched her marriage crumble. She watched Marcus grow cold and distant. She discovered his affair with Jasmine through text messages he'd been careless enough to leave on the kitchen counter. She could have confronted him, could have filed for divorce. could have told him the truth about the mansion he thought he'd earned through his own success. But Kaisha remembered her grandmother's words. Real power doesn't need to announce itself. So she stayed quiet. She watched. She waited. She watched Marcus bring Jasmine to family dinners and introduce her as his colleague. She watched Gloria encourage the relationship, dropping hints that Marcus deserved someone more sophisticated, more polished, more worthy of the Davis name. She watched Jasmine get pregnant and announce it at a family gathering like it was something to celebrate. She watched Marcus's face light up with joy he'd never shown when they talked about having children together. And through it all, Kaisha stayed silent because she knew something they didn't. She knew the truth would reveal itself when the time was right. The night before they kicked her out, Kaisha had packed a single suitcase. She'd called Miss Washington and said 3 words. It's time. Finalize everything. Now, standing in that modest hotel room with nothing but her clothes and her grandmother's locket, Kaisha felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. The humiliation had been real. The pain had been genuine. But she knew it was temporary. For 2 weeks, Kaisha stayed quiet. She didn't call Marcus, didn't reach out to any of their mutual friends, didn't post anything on social media. She just waited. Meanwhile, back at the Davis estate, Marcus and his family were celebrating like they'd won the lottery. Jasmine moved into the master bedroom that same afternoon Kaisha was evicted. Gloria hired interior designers to redecorate every room, erasing any trace of Kaisha's presence. They threw parties, posted photos online. Jasmine documented every moment of her new life in the mansion, hashtagging it with things like new beginnings and real family. Marcus felt lighter than he had in years. No more guilt about the affair. No more pretending to care about Kaisha's feelings. He had the woman he really wanted, a baby on the way, and a life that finally felt like it matched his ambitions. Gloria threw dinner parties and invited all her society friends, showing off the renovations. Introducing Jasmine as the future Mrs. Davis, the woman my son should have married from the beginning. Jasmine walked through the mansion like she owned it, picking out new furniture, choosing new paint colors, planning a nursery in the room that used to be Kaisha's home office. None of them noticed the legal documents that kept arriving at the estate. Documents that Marcus's assistant kept forwarding to his spam folder because they looked like junk mail. Documents from law firms with names that should have made him pay attention. 2 weeks after Kaisha left, Gloria decided to throw a massive garden party. She wanted to officially introduce Jasmine to Chicago's Black elite society. She wanted everyone to see that the Davis family had upgraded, that they were done settling for less. She invited 200 people, rented white tents for the garden, hired caterers and a live band, sent out invitations on expensive cardstock that announced a celebration of new beginnings. Jasmine spent thousands on a designer maternity dress, had her hair and makeup done by the same team that worked with celebrities. She practiced her smile in the mirror, the one she'd use when people congratulated her on stealing another woman's husband. Marcus bought a new suit, got a fresh haircut, felt like a man who'd finally taken control of his destiny. The day of the party arrived with perfect weather, blue skies, light breeze, temperature just right. Guests started arriving at 2 in the afternoon, all dressed in their finest, ready to see what Gloria Davis had been bragging about for weeks. The garden looked like something out of a magazine. String lights hung between trees, round tables covered in white linen, a champagne fountain that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Everything was perfect. Gloria stood at the center of it all in a cream-colored dress, accepting compliments and air kisses from women who'd been her friends for decades. Jasmine stayed close to Marcus, one hand always on her belly, making sure everyone saw that baby bump and understood what it represented. Around 3 o'clock, Gloria clinked her champagne glass to get everyone's attention. The crowd quieted down, turning to face her with expectant smiles. "I want to thank all of you for being here today," Gloria said, her voice carrying across the garden. "This party is about more than just celebration. It's about family. It's about knowing your worth. It's about not settling for less than you deserve." She gestured to Jasmine, who stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Some of you know that my son Marcus recently ended his marriage to a woman who, bless her heart, just wasn't the right fit for our family. But God works in mysterious ways, and he brought us Jasmine, a woman who understands class, who carries herself with dignity, who's giving us the grandchild we've been praying for." The crowd applauded politely. Some of them looked uncomfortable. They'd known Kaisha. Some of them had liked her. But Gloria Davis was a powerful woman in their social circle, and nobody wanted to cross her. Marcus put his arm around Jasmine, feeling proud and vindicated. This was the life he deserved. This was what success looked like. That's when the music stopped. The band quit playing mid-song. Conversations died. Everyone turned toward the mansion's front gate. A black Mercedes Maybach was pulling up the long driveway, moving slow and deliberate, like it had all the time in the world. The car stopped at the edge of the party, and the back door opened. Kaisha stepped out. She looked nothing like the woman they'd kicked out 2 weeks ago. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo. She wore a tailored navy blue suit, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. Diamond earrings caught the sunlight. Her makeup was flawless. She moved with the quiet confidence of a woman who knew exactly who she was and what she was worth. Behind her came 3 people in tailored suits, carrying briefcases, lawyers. Beside them, 2 men in dark clothing, unmistakably private security. The garden fell silent. 200 guests froze mid-conversation, champagne glasses hovering in the air, all staring at the woman who clearly hadn't been invited. Gloria's shock turned to fury. "Security," she shouted. "Remove this woman from my property now." Kaisha didn't look at her. She walked forward, calm and composed, security at her sides. Lawyers close behind. "Your property," Kaisha said gently, her voice carrying through the silence like thunder. She pulled a document from her purse and handed it to Gloria, whose hands began to shake. One lawyer stepped forward, an older man with a steady voice. "This is the official deed and inheritance transfer for the Davis estate, valued at $500 million. Mrs. Kaisha Davis is the sole legal owner of this property, the grounds, and every structure on it." The silence deepened. Marcus shoved through the crowd. "That's impossible. I bought this." He stopped, realization draining the color from his face. He'd never seen a deed, never signed anything. Another document appeared. "You leased this estate through a shell company managed by your employer. That lease ended 3 months ago. You've been living here illegally." Kaisha finally looked at Marcus. "My grandmother was Lorraine Davis," she said evenly. "This estate has always belonged to my bloodline." And in that moment, the truth settled over the garden like a storm. Kaisha turned to Jasmine, who had gone so pale her makeup looked like a mask. "Every room you redecorated was mine. Every party you threw was in my house. Every photo you posted showed you living in my inheritance. She faced Gloria next. You threw me out of my own estate. You slapped me on my own front steps. You celebrated your victory in my home. Then she looked at Marcus. Something in her eyes made him step back. You called me poor. You said I wasn't worthy. You handed me $500 like charity while standing inside my $500 million inheritance. The crowd began to murmur. Phones came out. This wasn't drama anymore. It was destruction. Kaisha's head lawyer stepped forward. Mrs. Davis is exercising her legal right as sole property owner. All current occupants have 72 hours to vacate. Personal items only. Everything else belongs to the estate. Eviction notices were handed to Marcus, Gloria, and Jasmine. Security moved in. Jasmine grabbed Marcus, panic rising. You said this was yours. Marcus couldn't answer. Gloria protested weakly. We'll fight this. You can try, Kaisha said calmly. The inheritance is verified and court-approved. This estate is mine. It always was. She glanced at the guests. The party's over. Please leave my property. Kaisha walked away. As the Maybach pulled off, she smiled, not in victory, but in quiet confirmation. Her grandmother had been right. Real power doesn't announce itself. It waits. Behind her, the party collapsed into chaos. That afternoon, Marcus's boss called back. He was fired immediately. The scandal from the party was everywhere, and the company couldn't risk the damage. By sunset, Marcus had lost his job. That same night, Jasmine packed her bags. She didn't wait. She took her designer clothes, the jewelry Marcus had bought her, and left without hesitation. I'm not raising a baby in poverty, she said coldly. You lied. Her lawyer, she promised, would handle child support. 2 weeks later, Marcus saw her on Instagram already dating a doctor. Gloria's fall followed. Society friends stopped calling. Her country club membership vanished. The charity board forced her resignation. She overheard whispers about how she'd thrown out the real heiress while living in her house. Within months, Gloria was in a small apartment, her old life gone. When she tried to apologize, Keisha's lawyer responded with a cease and desist. Marcus ended up in a cramped studio, working retail to cover rent and child support. One morning he saw a magazine cover Kaisha Davis, the quiet heiress who reclaimed her legacy. She stood before the mansion, calm and powerful. The article spoke of a foundation she built to help young women rise. Marcus tried calling. The number was disconnected. Months later, he passed the estate by accident. The gardens were brighter. A new sign stood proudly, the Lorraine Davis Foundation. He watched Kaisha walk out, laughing with young women, happy and whole. She never looked his way. And in that moment, Marcus understood some losses are final and some truths arrive too late.